Warborne Above Ashes had the perfect setup for a hardcore PvP MMO. Full loot combat, seasonal wars, and a persistent battlefield where everything you do feeds into a larger conflict. On paper, this could have been the next Albion Online, but instead, it's already fighting for its survival. Just a few months after launch, it's already facing heavy pay-to-win criticism, and along with that, it has lost the majority of its player base. So let's strip away the drama and answer the simple question: is Warborne actually fun to play in 2026? So what is Warborne trying to deliver? Warborne Above Ashes is a PvP focused MMO set in a post-apocalyptical science fiction world. There are no traditional theme park systems like quest hubs, dungeons or raid bosses. Everything in the game revolves around a seasonal faction war. You gather resources, you craft and trade stuff, you transport supplies through dangerous zones, and you fight for territory on a persistent map. When the season ends, the map resets and the next war will begin. If you have played Albion Online, you will recognize the core immediately. High risk zones, near full loot PvP, and an economy driven by players. In Warborne, you don't pick a specific class. Your build is defined by your so-called drifter, your weapon, armor, and your mods. That flexibility is one of the stronger aspects of the game. Swapping the roles by changing your gear feels very natural and sandbox-like. Next to your drifters, there is also your personal player hub. Here you can manage your drifters, your gear and your upgrades. You can also access the main game hub through your personal player hub. This is where you can trade and fight in the arena. You will also have access to vehicles and battle mounts that become important in sieges and larger fights in the game. They add a tactical depth beyond the small skirmishes you will encounter. So the general concept is very solid, and I really had a blast when I started the game. Because the gameplay loop is very simple, but it's always high stakes. During my time in Warborne, I cleared enemy camps, I fought other players, and I slayed mini-bosses while always returning to my hub to gear up and to upgrade. Basically, this is what you do as a core gameplay loop in Warborne. And everything you do feeds into contested zones and objective battles. And because of the near full loot PvP, every run has tension. Even basic gathering becomes stressful when you see enemy players on the horizon, so you're always focused. And compared to many other MMOs, this sometimes creates real adrenaline. You're not a chosen hero, you're a soldier in a grinding war machine. I ran into several PvP encounters which were all unexpected. And this made these encounters very thrilling. We were both surprised and didn't know if we should run or fight. After starting the fight, they quickly tried to disengage, but not in my house. In all of these PvP encounters, I either was very lucky or my League of Legends muscle memory kicked in quickly. Because as a lifelong League of Legends player, the top-down combat felt immediately familiar. The positioning, the cooldown management and the coordination. Fights are very fast and they can turn very quickly. All of this was tons of fun. But here is where my experience shifted. Despite the large scale the game tries to sell, it rather felt like a PvE grind than a living PvP war. The systems are there, but emotionally I didn't feel pulled into something meaningful. This might change after dozens of hours in a strong guild in the game, but in my time with it, I did not really feel the big war. And the PvP loot system can be really punishing. Solo players and small groups can get steamrolled by larger zergs. And with a shrinking population, this imbalance becomes very noticeable. So either you're part of a large group or you're done. The tension in the game is real, but so is the frustration. And this leads us to the biggest red flag in the game. In a game where gear equals power and where you lose that gear on death, monetization really matters a lot. Warborne provides boosts and progression advantages that many players consider pay to win, and I totally understand why. Even if the advantages aren't overwhelming or game breaking, the fact that they exist damage competitive integrity in the game. But what do I mean by that? In a faction war MMO, fairness is everything. If players feel like money influences battlefield strength, their faith in the game is gone very fast. And this seems to go hand in hand with a player population issue. Steam charts show a drop from around 9,000 average players at launch in September 2025 to only 200 to 300 in early 2026. This means that only 3% of the initial player base is remaining. And I mean, for a war-driven MMO, that's not just a minor issue, that's a really structural problem. Warborne's core gameplay relies on active factions, moving front lines, and large-scale battles. When the population drops, the core fantasy collapses with it. And this is the biggest threat to Warborne right now. More than balance, more than UI, and more than anything else in the game. Without enough players, the game won't work. Now let's move to graphics and performance. Visually, Warborne does a good job with its theme. It's not a graphical powerhouse, but the art direction works very well. Industrial bases, ruined zones, and militarized camps. These structures make it feel like a real science fiction battlefield. Abilities in the game feel very impactful, I have nothing negative to say about that. But the downside of the visuals? Environment repetition sets in very quickly in the game. Camps and structures just start blending together after a few hours. Nothing is really worth remembering. While I was playing, the performance of the game was very stable. I had no FPS drops or lag, but to be fair, I haven't participated in any major battles. But regarding the user experience, the weakest point is clearly the UI. The menus in the game feel very clunky. Inventory management feels heavier than it should, and in a game centered around logistics and gear, friction in the UI simply leads to frustration. And binding G as the primary interaction key, I mean, that's a decision your fingers will question within the first hour. It's not unplayable, but it just lacks polish to be intuitive. So, is Warborne fun? Yes, it definitely is in short bursts. The core gameplay loop is genuinely tense. The combat is very responsive, and the sandbox structure has potential. So if you enjoy being part of a war machine instead of the main character of the game, Warborne absolutely delivers that fantasy at moments. But here is the honest feeling I am walking away with. It feels like a game with a very strong foundation that is already fighting for survival after a few months. The combination of punishing PvP loot, pay-to-win perception, and a rapidly declining player base is, let's say it carefully, not good. All of these aspects create instability around an otherwise solid core. If you're a hardcore sandbox PvP player with an organized guild, you might find something compelling here. But if you're playing alone and you care about fairness and a strong player population, I would recommend avoiding this game right now. Warborne is by no means a bad game, but right now it feels like a war without soldiers. And for a PvP focused MMO, that's a very dangerous place to be. If you are enjoying the MMO journey here, join the channel Discord. The link is in the description. And if you want to support the channel, channel members have a private chat space waiting for you there. See you next time.